Hannibal Barca was born in 247 BC in the city of Carthage, a major power in North Africa, renowned for its wealth and powerful military. However, before Hannibal became a military legend, he was raised in a family with a great military history. His father, Hannibal Barca, was one of Carthage's most prominent generals during the First Punic War against Rome. Hannibal was not only a brilliant strategist but also a determined father who had a significant influence on his son's military career. Hannibal Barca was born in 247 BC in the city of Carthage, a major power in North Africa, renowned for its wealth and powerful military. However, before Hannibal became a military legend, he was raised in a family with a great military history. His father, Hannibal Barca, was one of Carthage's most prominent generals during the First Punic War against Rome. Hannibal was not only a brilliant strategist but also a determined father who had a significant influence on his son's military career. In addition to Hannibal, Hannibal also had an older brother named Hasdrubal, who was a prominent general of Carthage. However, the Barca family faced many hardships after the First Punic War, when Carthage was forced to sign a peace treaty with Rome, accepting harsh terms. Hannibal was then given command of the territories in Iberia, modern-day Spain, where he continued to fight and strengthen Carthage's power. Hannibal was the first to lead the Carthaginian army into Iberia, where he established strong military bases and began exploiting the region's rich resources. After Hamilcar's death in battle in 228 BCE, command of the Carthaginian army in Iberia passed to Hannibal's brother, Hasdrubal. However, after Hasdrubal was assassinated in 221 BCE, Hannibal, who was only 26 years old at the time, was given command of the Carthaginian army. When Hannibal began his military career, he inherited a family legacy that was both prestigious and challenging. This event also partly reflects the strong stance of the Barca family toward war, always seeking to restore and avenge the defeat in the First Punic War, as well as reaffirming the position of Carthage against Rome. With these experiences, Hannibal absorbed his father's military philosophy while also inheriting an indomitable spirit. However, what set him apart was that Hannibal not only learned from Hamilcar's tactics but also emerged as a creative strategist, skillfully combining various elements of warfare to create highly unique strategies. This ability helped Hannibal stand out and become one of the most brilliant generals in ancient military history. By approaching warfare as a strategic battle of wits, combining the use of terrain and military forces, Hannibal was not only the heir to the Barca family's military legacy but also the creator of tactics that are still studied by military academies around the world today. In 218 BC, when the Second Punic War broke out between Carthage and Rome, Hannibal Barca, who was only 29 years old at the time, was entrusted with commanding the Carthaginian army. However, instead of choosing to fight Rome directly in familiar territories, Hannibal decided to execute a bold and risky strategy, march straight into Italy and launch an attack on Rome right in their own homeland. What makes this decision bold is the Alps, a gigantic, dangerous mountain range that was nearly impossible to cross by the armies of that time. Everyone thought it was a crazy decision, but Hannibal not only overcame this challenge, but did so miraculously. He led the Carthaginian army, consisting of about 50,000 soldiers, 9,000 cavalry, and 37 war elephants, across the Alps in a long and arduous march. The war elephants, which were Hannibal's special weapon, faced numerous challenges, from treacherous terrain to harsh weather. However, with disciplined tactics and unwavering determination, his army overcame these challenges, despite suffering heavy losses. When the Carthaginian army reached northern Italy, they not only crossed the Alps but also defeated the Roman legions waiting to block them. At this point, Hannibal displayed one of the greatest military strategies in history, drawing the enemy into small battles to inflict losses, then launching major engagements with surprise tactics. He made it impossible for Rome to predict his next move. Hannibal made a strong impression in his early battles in Italy. The Battle of Trebia in 218 BC is a prime example. When the Roman army, led by General Sempronius Longus, advanced to attack, Hannibal employed a tactic of luring the enemy. He allowed the Romans to enter a narrow area by the riverbank, where the Carthaginian forces were ready to ambush. As the Romans crossed the river, he ordered an attack from both sides, supported by cavalry and ambush units. The Roman army was disastrously defeated, with around 20,000 soldiers killed or captured. With his victory at Trebia, Hannibal continued to put pressure on Rome, but the most legendary battle of his life was the Battle of Cannae in 216 BC. This battle became a historical milestone in ancient warfare. In the Battle of Cannae, Hannibal faced a Roman army twice the size of his own. However, he relied not only on the strength of his army but also on his clever use of encirclement tactics and deception. He arranged his troops in a circular formation and gradually created a tight encirclement around the Roman forces. Once the Romans were trapped, Hannibal ordered a simultaneous attack from all directions, preventing the Romans from mounting any counterattack. As a result, the Roman army lost about 70,000 soldiers, while the Carthaginian army suffered only around 6,000 casualties. The Battle of Cannae became one of the greatest military victories in history and a classic lesson in the art of encirclement tactics. With such resounding victories, Hannibal not only shook Rome but also made the world bow in admiration of his strategic genius. However, despite Hannibal's many triumphs, the war was still ongoing, and the greatest challenges were yet to come. During the Second Punic War, Hannibal Barca achieved victories that were not only resounding but also served as lessons in military strategy. Two of his greatest victories were the Battle of Trebia and the Battle of Cannae. In the winter of 218 BC, after crossing the Alps, Hannibal faced the Roman army at the Trebia River. His army had to navigate a challenging terrain, but Hannibal quickly proved that he was not only an outstanding warrior but also a master of tactics. At this moment, the Roman army, commanded by General Tiberius Sempronius Longus, was stationed near the Trebia River, and Hannibal saw an opportunity to strike. To lure the Romans into his trap, he decided to use a very clever tactic. He had his troops feign retreat, making the Romans believe they were winning. Once the Roman forces were dispersed and fell into the trap, the Carthaginian army launched a surprise attack. Hannibal used tactics such as luring the enemy into areas full of dangers and trap-laden battlefields. The Carthaginian cavalry ambushed the Roman army from both flanks, while his infantry attacked from the front. In addition, the snow and biting cold reduced the Roman soldiers' fighting ability. As a result, the Romans suffered a heavy defeat, with nearly 30,000 soldiers killed or wounded. This was Hannibal's first major victory after arriving in Italy. 1 year after his victory at Trebia, in 216 BC, Hannibal achieved his greatest victory of his career at the Battle of Cannae. This was a battle where his strategy was taken to a whole new level. The Battle of Cannae demonstrated that a brilliant general not only wins through strength but also through intelligence and the ability to control the battle in a sophisticated manner. The Roman army, under the command of Lucius Aemilius Paulus and Gaius Terentius Varro, led an army of up to 80,000 men to face Hannibal, who had only about 50,000 soldiers. The disparity in numbers was huge, but Hannibal proved that quantity is not the decisive factor in war. Hannibal decided to use a tactic that many military strategists later regarded as one of the smartest and most dangerous in history, the encirclement tactic. He positioned the Carthaginian infantry at the center, forming a crescent shape, while cavalry and other military units were placed on the flanks. When the Roman forces attacked the center, the Carthaginian troops quickly withdrew, creating a gap that allowed the Romans to advance deeper into the encirclement. Then, Hannibal's flanking forces moved in from both sides, surrounding the Romans from both directions, creating a deadly trap. With the Roman army unable to break free, the battle became a disaster for the Romans. They were trapped in a siege and could not escape. The Carthaginian forces either destroyed or caused 70,000 Roman casualties, while their own losses were only about 6,000. The Battle of Cannae became one of the most decisive military victories in history, demonstrating Hannibal's strategic brilliance and exceptional skill in commanding his forces. The Battle of Cannae was not only a military victory but also a lesson in strategy, tactics, and leadership skills. Although Carthage was unable to fully capitalize on this victory to destroy Rome, it sent shockwaves throughout the ancient world. Both Rome and other nations had to respect Hannibal's brilliance, and his tactics at Cannae have become a classic lesson in military academies for thousands of years. Although Hannibal achieved stunning victories at Trebia and Cannae, his career soon faced significant challenges. The resilience of the Roman army, combined with changes in strategy and military support from Carthage, ultimately led to Hannibal's defeat at the Battle of Zama. After his resounding victories and the legendary march across the Alps, Hannibal faced a major difficulty: the lack of resources and military support from his home city of Carthage. Despite Hannibal's impressive victories in Italy and the fear he instilled in Rome, he was unable to change the long-term course of the war. With the Carthaginian army unable to maintain sufficient strength to repel Rome, Carthage had to recall Hannibal in 203 BC to face a major threat from the Roman army, which was preparing for a decisive invasion of his homeland. This is a crucial turning point in the Second Punic War, when Hannibal had to return to Carthage to defend his homeland, despite having completely dominated northern Italy for nearly 15 years. In fact, Hannibal still maintained control in the region but was unable to completely defeat Rome due to the lack of necessary support from Carthage. Meanwhile, Scipio Africanus, the brilliant Roman general and the only one capable of facing Hannibal, led the Roman army across the Mediterranean Sea and into North Africa, confronting the Carthaginian forces at the Battle of Zama in 202 BC. Although the Roman army was outnumbered, Scipio employed a very clever strategy. He knew that Hannibal was known for his powerful offensive tactics and the use of war elephants to disrupt formations, so Scipio decided to develop an excellent counterattack strategy. Scipio arranged his army in a crescent formation, creating gaps in the lines to lure Hannibal's war elephants into charging. Once the elephants entered the Roman lines, the Romans could easily adjust and encircle them. This allowed the Romans to avoid the fierce attack of the war elephants, which had been a powerful weapon Hannibal used in many previous battles. Additionally, Scipio deployed Roman cavalry in coordination with them. At Zama, Hannibal's Carthaginian army faced a Roman force that was better organized and had a more cohesive strategy. Scipio's insightful tactics prevented Hannibal from employing the encirclement or flexibility he had used in previous battles. Although Hannibal still demonstrated courage and skill in commanding his troops, the might of Rome and the unity of its army led to a painful defeat for Carthage. The Battle of Zama ended with a decisive victory for Rome. This defeat not only marked the end of the Second Punic War but also a turning point in Hannibal's life. Although he survived the battle, Carthage was forced to sign a peace treaty with Rome. As part of the agreement, Carthage had to pay a large indemnity, reduce its army and fleet, and was not allowed to engage in wars without Rome's consent. The Battle of Zama ended with a decisive victory for Rome. This defeat not only marked the end of the Second Punic War but also a turning point in Hannibal's life. Although he survived the battle, Carthage was forced to sign a peace treaty with Rome. Under the terms of the treaty, Carthage had to pay a large indemnity, reduce its army and fleet, and was not allowed to engage in wars without Rome's approval. Although there were many reasons for Hannibal's failure at Zama, such as the lack of resources, Scipio's strong counteroffensive strategy, and the lack of timely support from Carthage, this defeat was still a major shock for him and the Carthaginian army. A painful truth is that after the war ended, Hannibal was unable to save Carthage from Rome's tight control. After the defeat at the Battle of Zama, Hannibal Barca no longer held a position of power in Carthage. Although he was one of the greatest military commanders in history, Carthage was forced to accept a harsh peace treaty with Rome, marking the end of the Second Punic War. Under the terms of the peace agreement, Carthage had to reduce its army and was not allowed to wage war without Rome's permission. After Carthage's defeat in the war, Hannibal could not return home with the honor he deserved. He continued to play a significant role in Carthaginian politics, but the situation quickly changed. To avoid Roman retaliation, Hannibal had to go into hiding. Around 195 BC, Hannibal left Carthage and sought protection in Corsi, where he was welcomed by Eastern kings, including Antiochus III of the Seleucid kingdom. Here, Hannibal continued to showcase his military talent when Antiochus III assigned him the task of training the Seleucid army to counter the Roman invasion. Under Hannibal's command, the Seleucid army employed creative tactics in their encounters with Rome. However, no matter how skilled Hannibal was, he could not reverse the situation. His strategies during the Roman-Seleucid War ultimately could not withstand the superior strength of the Roman army. After this war ended, Hannibal managed to maintain his freedom for a brief period. However, once again, he faced a threat from Rome. In 183 BC, under Rome's orders, a special army was sent to capture Hannibal. To avoid being captured and falling into the hands of his enemies, Hannibal chose death by suicide. Despite this, his death did not mark the end of his legacy. On the contrary, his death further solidified his image as a resilient strategist in the minds of the Carthaginian people and them. Although Hannibal passed away at the age of 64, his legacy has never faded. The tactics Hannibal applied in battles, especially the Battle of Cannae, have become a classic lesson in the art of war. Military strategists, from generations of soldiers to modern-day war theorists, continue to study and learn from Hannibal's legendary tactics. Over the centuries, Hannibal has been remembered not only as a great general but also as a symbol of intelligence and perseverance. The Battle of Cannae, with its brilliant encirclement tactics, is still regarded as one of the greatest battles in military history. Military scholars such as Napoleon Bonaparte, Karl von Clausewitz, and Dwight D. Eisenhower all acknowledge the profound influence of Hannibal on military strategy. Furthermore, his feats have had a profound impact on culture and art. Hannibal is mentioned in literary works, films, and even in strategy games. He is a symbol of someone who never succumbs to challenges, always knowing how to turn difficult circumstances into opportunities for victory. Hannibal Barca was not just a military leader, he is a symbol of brilliant strategy, resilience, and victories that seemed impossible to achieve. His legacy still exists in every strategic perspective of the world today. And although he passed away more than 2,000 years ago, the name Hannibal remains an indelible mark in history.